We've all experienced that unsettling situation. You're talking to a friend about buying a backpack, you mention it in passing, and shortly afterwards your cell phone shows you ads for backpacks on Instagram, Facebook, or Google. You didn't search for anything, you didn't type anything into the search engine, you just said it out loud. And then the inevitable question arises, are they listening to me? This phenomenon is not isolated. Millions of people around the world claim to have experienced the same thing. Conversations about travel, cleaning products, even personal topics suddenly appear on your mobile screen as if someone had been taking notes. The coincidence is so exact that it's hard to believe it's a coincidence. Social media is full of viral testimonials from users who have done the test. They get together with friends, talk repeatedly about a product they've never searched for before. For example, bird cages or cat food, even though they've never had one. And hours later, advertising suggestions appear in their feed. The anecdote is repeated so many times that it ends up seeming like a truth that's impossible to ignore. These kinds of experiences fuel a universal suspicion cell phones are programmed to constantly listen to what we say. Not only when we activate commands like OK Google or Hey Siri, but all the time silently collecting fragments of our everyday conversations to feed the gigantic market of targeted advertising. Fear grows because in a world where privacy is already fragile, discovering that even your conversations in the privacy of your home could be monitored turns your cell phone into something closer to a pocket spy than a personal tool. To what extent are we being monitored? What that device knows about us? The most disturbing thing is that no one needs complex technical evidence to feel it. All it takes is one coincidence that is too precise for fear to set in. A single experience is enough to sow permanent doubt. If it happened to me once, how many more times has it happened without me noticing? Thus, common suspicion becomes a kind of modern myth shared by all. A technological rumor that is passed on by word of mouth, reinforced by social media and everyday experience. No matter how many times companies deny it, for many the evidence is in their own daily lives. And that's what makes it so disturbing. The feeling that even if no one admits it, our cell phones already know too much. The big question is inevitable. Do cell phones really listen to us constantly? Technically, any modern smartphone has the ability to do so. Microphones are always active, waiting for you to say, Hey Siri, or OK Google. For these features to work, the phone needs to process every word you say in the background. That means your device is, in effect, listening. But the question is what it does with everything it hears. Tech companies swear that these audio clips are processed locally and are not stored or sent to servers except when you intentionally activate the voice assistant. However, multiple investigations have shown that this is not always the case. There have been cases where Apple, Amazon, and Google employees confess to listening to random user recordings to improve the system. And what's disturbing is that these recordings included private discussions, couple fights, and even intimate moments. Beyond voice assistants, there are thousands of apps that request permission to access your microphone. Many of them don't need it to function properly, but they ask for it anyway. Why should a flashlight app, a simple game, or a photo editor have access to record your voice? In several cases, it was discovered that these permissions were used to collect information without the user's knowledge. This does not mean that your cell phone is constantly transmitting a recording of everything you say, because it would be practically impossible to handle the volume of data and energy expenditure that this would entail. Most likely, passive listening algorithms are activated, capable of detecting specific keywords and only then recording information useful to the advertising business. In other words, it's not every sentence you say that matters, but certain patterns that reveal your interests. This is where paranoia mixes with reality. Maybe they're not listening to absolutely everything, but they're listening to enough for the coincidence to become disturbing. And most importantly, even if they weren't listening directly, the rest of the data they already collect, location, search history, contacts, emails, social media, is so extensive that it may seem like your cell phone guessed your words. The truth is, it may not have guessed anything, it just already knew. So, do cell phones really listen to us? The short answer is yes, in a way they do. Maybe not like in the movies with a microphone recording every whisper, but enough to make us suspect that we're never completely alone. And that small possibility, even if it's disguised as a practical feature, is what keeps alive the feeling that our phone is at the same time our best ally and our closest spy. Behind the suspicion that cell phones are listening to us lies something even bigger, the multi-billion-dollar data business. Today, our personal data is worth more than gold or oil. Every search, every click, every recorded location is a piece of information that, when combined with millions of others, builds a detailed portrait of who you are, what you do, and above all, what you want to buy. Big tech companies don't need to listen to all your conversations to know you. They already have armies of algorithms that analyze your digital behavior. They know where you live, what time you get up, what your routines are, what kind of music calms you down, and even how long you spend looking at a photo on social media. That level of detail allows them to predict your decisions better than your own family members. The key is targeted advertising. It's not about showing random ads, but about placing the product you're about to need right in front of you. If one day you search for plane tickets and the next day you see a promotion for hotels in that same city, it's no coincidence. It's a system designed to anticipate your desires. The question is, are you really the one making the decisions, or are you already being manipulated by what your cell phone knows about you? This data trade is so lucrative that it has surpassed entire industries. Facebook, Google, TikTok, and other platforms are free for the user, but you pay the real price with your privacy. Every time you accept their terms of use, you voluntarily give up your information to be packaged, analyzed, and sold to advertisers seeking to profile consumers down to the last detail. The most disturbing thing is that we're not just talking about innocent advertising. Insurance companies, financial institutions, political parties, and even governments have shown interest in buying or manipulating this data. Just remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where millions of Facebook profiles were used to influence elections. If your vote can be shaped by what your cell phone knows about you, what is left of freedom of choice? Thus, the data business turns your cell phone into a mine that never stops producing. While you work, rest, or sleep, your data continues to circulate, feeding an industry that generates billions in revenue. And in that industry, privacy ceases to exist. Everything becomes a commodity. The real question is not whether they are listening to us, but how much others are willing to pay for what they already know about us. The suspicion that cell phones spy on us did not come out of nowhere. Over the last few years, multiple controversial cases have come to light, further raising the alarm. Perhaps the most famous was Cambridge Analytica. There have also been direct complaints against apps that abused microphone permissions. Innocent games, flashlight apps, and photo editing apps were found to be collecting audio data without any real need. In 2018, for example, several apps available on Google Play were removed after it was revealed that they were recording ambient sound and using it to analyze consumer habits. A disturbing detail: millions of people had already downloaded them. Even governments have been involved. The Pegasus software case revealed that thousands of cell phones were secretly infiltrated to spy on journalists, activists, and politicians in different countries. Although Pegasus is not an advertising tool, but rather a surveillance tool, it highlighted how vulnerable a smartphone can be and how easy it is to turn it into a personal spy without the owner noticing. All these episodes share a common thread. Companies and authorities always deny it until the evidence is impossible to hide. And when it is finally discovered, they often justify it with phrases such as improving service or protecting security.
They track our every move. They monitor every moment in our lives, and they exploit our data for profit. And you can ask them all the questions you want, but they're not going to change. They don't have to.
However, each scandal feeds into the same conclusion. What we now call digital privacy may already be a thing of the past. When talking about cell phones that spy, sooner or later, the most complicated issue arises, the legal one. Is it really illegal for your phone to listen to you? The answer is not so simple. Most apps hide behind something that very few users read: privacy policies. By accepting with a click, you are essentially giving your consent for them to collect, process, and share your data, even if you are not always aware of the scope of that transfer. Companies know how to play with ambiguity. Their contracts often state that they do not collect audio without authorization, but at the same time, they request microphone permissions that rarely have a clear justification. In other words, they do not record everything, but they can do so under certain terms that you yourself accepted when you installed the app. This is the real dilemma. Legally, it is not considered spying if you allowed it without realizing it. In Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, imposes stricter restrictions requiring companies to explain in detail what they do with the information and to give users the option to revoke permissions. In California, the CCPA seeks something similar. However, in much of the world, legislation remains vague or non-existent, allowing companies to operate in a gray area where they can exploit your data without serious consequences. This legal vacuum creates a disturbing paradox. What may sound like an invasion of privacy to you may be legitimate use of information protected by a digital contract to a company. And therein lies the real weakness. What is legal does not always coincide with what is ethical. Furthermore, when scandals erupt, the penalties are rarely proportional to the damage. $1,000,000 fines for a tech giant end up being a drop in the bucket compared to the profits made from data exploitation. Thus, what is illegal ends up being profitable, and companies can afford to pay the fine as part of their operating budget. That's why we talk about a legal gray area, a blurred line where companies operate comfortably, protected by the complexity of the laws and the passivity of users. In this scenario, the question is not whether what they do is legal or not, but how much they can take advantage of it before society reacts. And by then, it may already be too late. At this point, the big question is whether everything we feel when we look at our cell phones is paranoia, or if there really is something behind it. For some experts, believing that your phone listens to every word is simply a modern myth, a mixture of fear and coincidence. They argue that advertising algorithms are so advanced that it is enough to analyze your searches, your location, and even the sites visited by people around you to show you ads that seem to read your mind. In fact, controlled experiments have been conducted to test the theory. In several studies, groups of people intentionally talked about products they had never searched for on the internet, hoping that related ads would appear. In many cases, nothing happened, which fuels the idea that it's all suggestion. The human mind tends to remember only the coincidences and forget all the times when nothing happened. However, the scandals we already know about, apps that used the microphone unnecessarily, voice assistants that recorded private conversations, make it difficult to completely dismiss the suspicion. Maybe they don't listen to you constantly, but it's enough for them to do so occasionally for the feeling of invasion to be the same. Paranoia, then, stems from real experiences, even if they are not as widespread as we think. The big problem is that the average user will never have access to the absolute truth. We don't know what audio fragments are stored, who listens to them, or what companies buy them. We depend solely on the word of the companies and the occasional leaks that come to light. That lack of transparency is what makes paranoia an inevitable feeling. Furthermore, even if cell phones did not listen, the amount of information they collect is enough to make it seem like they do. Your purchase history, your daily routes, your written conversations, your likes on social media, everything is intertwined in a profile so detailed that it can anticipate what you will say before you say it. Thus, the line between paranoia and reality becomes invisible. And if you want to know about what is probably the most evil company of all, I've made a video about the Nestle case, the company that stole water to sell it and literally caused the deaths of several babies.